Lingenfelder Performance Engineering is a company that's 40 years old. It was established by a distant relative of mine, John Lingenfelder. John was a real famous race car driver. Actually had 13 NHRA Grand National titles, was an incredible engineer, and built horsepower in Corvettes like nobody had ever seen before. Actually was the driver of the famous Sledgehammer car that was out for Callaway, and drove it to its record speed. John wasn't afraid of anything. Did an incredible job building the company, building our brand, and unfortunately passed away after from injuries in a racing accident in 2002. And John's brother Charlie convinced me to come in and take the reins of Lingenfelder Performance Engineering, and I've been running it since then. We specialize in building Corvettes for the most part. That's been our heritage. The Corvette is, from my perspective, the essence of sports cars from start to finish, and it's been a car that General Motors built, did a great job with, built horsepower, but left some room for us to really build a whole lot more horsepower. Their light handling over the years has gotten better and better. We've had a great time drag racing Corvettes over the years, and we're looking forward to the new C7 so we can make some more horsepower and drag race that car. My passion for Corvettes is probably deeper than a lot of people can really understand. In fact, I think some of my friends think I need psychiatric help. I'm so focused. But, you know, when I'm around Corvette guys, car guys, everybody understands what it's like and understands the collection and understands why I have 250 cars and why I enjoy the hobby like I do. And started collecting cars about 25 years ago. I actually started, my first collector car was an XKE Jaguar. Sometime in the middle 2000s, we realized how much people really like to look at the cars, and decided that it would be an opportunity to share cars with other car clubs and things of that nature, and started to do events at the car collection here with regard to bringing people in to look at them. The Duntov Mule car is one of the most significant cars in the car collection here. It is truly the first V8 Corvette. It has lots and lots of history to it. The engine was built by Smokey Yanick. It's got incredible history. It's been through all kinds of different racing venues and things of that nature, and it's a car that people love to come to the Lingenfelder collection to see.
Well, this is a really significant car. It's a 1954 Corvette. It's called EX87 is kind of the name that it has, and that's because General Motors, it was tagged that, experimental for EX87 was the car number. So this is a car that's known as the Duntov Mule. Zora Duntov wrote this letter that went to all the top brass at GM that said, Corvette has to have a racing heritage if it's going to survive. So we need to create that racing heritage. Well, this is the car that started that. This is the car they gave him to prove that. So Zora Duntov, the chief engineer of the car at the time, came up with a plan to take one of the pre-production V8 engines, took this car and sent it to Florida to Smokey Yunick's shop. And Smokey was a famous guy for racing NASCAR and racing all kinds of other things, and he was known for thinking outside of the box. He took it all apart. The factory engine was intended to be 265 cubic inches. They took that engine and he upsized it to 307 cubic inches. Zora Duntov worked with the engineers back here in Detroit, and they came up with a camshaft profile that ultimately became known as the Duntov 3030. So Smokey used that camshaft, upsized the cubic inch, did some aero modifications to the car that you see with the headlights covered, took the windshield off, put a small windshield, put a tail to create aerodynamic, and where the driver sat, covered the passenger seat, and some other things. They did some suspension modifications, things like that. They took the car to the Desert Proving Grounds that GM owned out in Mesa, went 162 miles an hour with it in 1954. So that was phenomenal to have a car that could run that fast in that period of time. So got a lot of attention. It did exactly what they set out to do. It was late 54 in the model run, and the 55 Corvettes were getting ready to come out. So GM wanted to take the opportunity to set a record at Daytona. So they shipped the Duntov Mule back to Smokey's shop in Florida, shipped a new 55 Corvette to Smokey's shop, where they took the engine out of the Duntov Mule, put it in the 55 Corvette, and went to Daytona and set a record with it. The Duntov Mule at that point was just a development car, and that went back to GM and went off to do some other things, lived its life inside GM. When they finished the 55 with the V8 in it, the new production car, it went back to Smokey's shop where they took the engine out of it, and Smokey, at somebody at his shop, took the original build book for that, put it on top of the engine, covered it with a sheet of plastic, and stuck it under a workbench where it sat for 47 years. This gentleman that found out that this engine existed knew where the car was, so he went to Florida at the auction, bought the engine, then went and bought the car, and then totally restored it. Ken obviously loved the car, wanted to own it, but wasn't going to spend millions to own it. And it got to a point, and the gentleman pulled the reserve off of it, expecting it to go much higher, and it didn't, and Ken was able to buy it for a very reasonable rate. One of the amazing things about the car is that it runs and drives, and we drive it.